We had some of the audience ask us about continuous manufacturing, particularly when, for example, pharma in-licenses assets. But I think more generally, and maybe I'll just add a comment to that. So when we look at continuous manufacturing, I think many in the audience, like our speakers and myself following the industry, feel a little disappointed. We were supposed to already be there. We were supposed to have implemented advanced manufacturing processes, moved away from batch, and be well on our way. Why haven't we? And some of the audience, a number of them asked questions that seem to point to that. I did some research, and two interesting answers to that question came up. So, as usual, a lot of the biopharma folks say, well, gee, the FDA is tough to deal with when it comes to continuous manufacturing, getting stuff approved and what they need, et cetera. And the FDA says, are you kidding me? I mean, this is what we want. The FDA has been pushing continuous manufacturing, and they're saying the industry's dragging their feet, not us, because this is the way we want to go. So you have that dynamic going. And then secondly, and I did an article for outsourcedpharma.com, an editorial, where people said, the real hang-up on continuous manufacturing are the biopharma CEOs. Big pharma all the way down to smaller specialty companies where they just don't yet feel comfortable with putting the upfront investment into it, getting the equipment, being able to do everything you need to monitor and have people experienced with the continuous process. So I'll just preface by saying that's kind of an interesting dynamic where the FDA says we want this. Some say it's hard to deal with the FDA, and others say, you know what, it's executive management who are holding continuous manufacturing back to a degree. Any of my speakers want to join in on something about continuous manufacturing?
Louis, this is John.
Go ahead.
This is more of a question back out to other people to see what they're saying, because I'm looking back way too many years to when I was a chemist in the laboratory, and we were talking about continuous manufacturing in I guess it was realistically the late 90s. And I think one of the things that inhibited us in this space way back then was that really you just needed to get your process out the door as fast as possible, and you didn't have the opportunity to experiment with some interesting science. It's not to say that continuous manufacturing activities aren't happening. I've seen some recently, which was some pretty spectacular stuff. But nonetheless, if the fundamental work being done by chemists in the chemistry space, and obviously as applies in other parts of the industry, is in more basic standard approaches, I wonder if that may be an inhibiting factor too. I guarantee you, our CEO had no idea what I was doing in the laboratory. So I'm just wondering whether it's really senior management or whether it's just more turning the crank at the fundamental level of getting these processes out of the shop as soon as possible.
I agree with that. I think everybody's used to doing something to get a return on the investment. And don't forget that these things have patents for 18 years. You spend 9 years of that patent life rallying around the FDA submission and all those early ways to make the product. And then once you're out and moving, you're probably going to spend a good 6 years trying to get your return on all that investment, if not that. And then you've got just a little bit of time left to go through another 4 to 6 year process to change the process and refile with the agency. So I think it begs the question, why would I go through that pain when I know there's a proven way to get it done?
I also think, as with all things new, you need to have a real champion for it within the organization who's willing to advocate for it and can advocate in a way that the senior leadership will be willing to say, yes, this is worth doing. So that's inside the company. And then even outside with a manufacturing partner, you need to have someone who's saying, yes, we want to do this. And to a certain extent, you might want to try to have cost sharing or something up this. So the manufacturing partner is saying we're not willing to take 100%, and the sponsor is not willing to say we want to take 100%, and trying to figure out to find a partner who's saying, okay, we will do this with you. Let's make a deal here. And I think if you get those two things together, and I think that is happening, it's happening slowly. You'll see more things come straight out. I think Vertex, one of their products is 100% continuous manufacturing.
Yep. Yeah. And Vertex is always held up as the example, and that's a good thing. And the bad thing is that's always the example. There are many fewer than we would hope. Mark, you had some further comments?
I did, Louis. Just maybe 30 more seconds back on the continuous manufacturing. We've invested quite significantly, both internally and externally, for development applications as well as commercial manufacturing in the continuous manufacturing space. It's not much like your CDMO service model. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, though, right? But where the science has allowed for it on either the API or the drug product side, we've invested in those capabilities. I would say what was key to our own success was ensuring we had development and commercial leadership fully engaged, whether that was business partners, quality, technical services support. It was a fully integrated effort, both internally and externally, as well as in parallel, quite extensive dialogue with global regulatory agencies to develop that. And we think that put us in the best position to advance some of our capabilities, again, whether they were internal within our own walls or working with external partners to develop those external capabilities. Again, having that flexibility, I think, serves us well.
Okay, yeah. Very, very good. Yana, go ahead.
So if I can add to that, I think this really comes down to the partnership. It's more than the relationship with the CDMOs, with the industry. And the industry is developing platform technologies for continuous manufacturing that will allow lower cost processes and will streamline the development of the continuous manufacturing. They are very flexible. They are offering milestone approach where the sponsor can opt out in case there are no favorable data or the proof of concept doesn't work out. Typically, the most difficult step is the materials feeding. So if that hurdle is overcome, then there can be a decision point to proceed or not to proceed. And the industry needs the pharma to embrace bringing it to the market as a future technology together. Back to the point that Louis mentioned in the beginning, we all hoped that we would be farther at this point. I've been attending continuous pharmaceutical processing conference for 3 or 4 years. And in the last one in January, actually there were probably 50 times more people than 3-4 years ago. A lot of manufacturers are already implementing continuous processing. It may be more in the drug substance space than in drug product. However, it is here and it's coming.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Very, very good.
And just one last point about that. I think our partners in the instrumentation and IT space have made that possible with the process analytical technologies, as we saw a lot of different technologies coming out in the 2000s, but the math and the ability to analyze and get the answer and all of that background work that needed to be done, I think that also took time to kind of flesh out and have usable types of equipment from one that's came out of a research lab into something that could go into a plant and just have an indicator or a flashlight or something, rather than someone having to sit there and do hours of modeling. So there is a bright future for continuous manufacturing. I totally believe that.